Alrighty, let's continue on with chapter 5 and let's be honest with each other. Do you have emotional intelligence? Well, self-knowledge is the keystone of emotional quotients. It's the awareness of one's feelings as they occur. The great philosopher said, "Know thyself." How well do you know yourself? Well, self-awareness is a non-reactive, non-judgmental attention to one's inner states and feelings. This is not an opportunity for you to beat yourself up. It's not an opportunity for you to pat yourself on the back. It's taking a truly honest look at who you are and where you are in the whole certain state of things. So here's 3 questions to ask yourself. First, what are the differences between how you see yourself and how others see you? What's the delta there? What's the areas where perhaps you have not realized that the way you do something, the way you say something, the way you present yourself comes off in a very different way than how you intend for that to happen. So those are things that you really need to focus on and think about. In light of that, also ask yourself the question, what matters to you? What are your priorities? What are your beliefs, your attitudes, your values? What sort of things are non-negotiables for you? And what sort of things maybe are you willing to take a second look at to see if maybe you should hold those different points of view? And those sort of things, as you consider that and how others perceive you and who you are, there may be some things that you're going to want to change in order for you to be able to achieve your goals and also be successful not just in your own eyes, but to be able to have positive relationships with those that you encounter. Now, what are the differences between how you see yourself and how others see you? The first step in getting feedback is to get a sense of how your self-perception or how you see yourself differs from your reputation or in how others see you. And this is something where, if you're really sincere about this, it can be very helpful. Sometimes it can be jarring, but if you're ready for it, very beneficial. The idea of getting feedback from others. This can provide proof of the necessity of changing specific behaviors in any of the various dimensions of EQ that we've talked about. Again, as a reminder, there's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. And you want to look in those 4 particular areas and try to get people to share with you how they perceive you in different situations, in some of the ways that you present yourself. And if you're able to make that assessment, some people might be very honest if you ask them that question. Others might not be as quick to share those things with you, but if you're in tune with watching someone and how they interact with you, especially watching things like nonverbal cues, perhaps you can get some insight into some of the ways that people react with you and what you do. What matters to you? When you get your feedback, let that information tell you what you want to improve on. But you also have to consider what your goals are, what you want to get better at now and in the future. We say that it's not all about you when we talk about trying to do things in such a way you provide customer service, you look out for other people, but it doesn't mean that you completely disregard your own beliefs, attitudes, values, goals, that sort of thing. So there has to be a balance there. Your own emotional intelligence is completely tied up in your own sense of self, so that being intrinsically motivated to make the effort to change is going to matter more than just simply learning a new skill. it's kind of this idea of creating a certain drive or a certain passion within you. If you seriously want to make a change about yourself, it has to come from within. It can't, at least necessarily and not completely, be motivated by meeting the expectations of others. There can be a drive there, but you have to desire to want that change as much as they would like to see things changed in you. Otherwise, the motivation is going to be very low, if there's any at all. And even if you accomplish it, it may not be something in the end that you wind up being satisfied with when it comes to how you perceive yourself. What changes will you make to achieve these goals? Once you've determined what skills you want to focus on, you have to identify what specific actions you will take. So, you're setting goals, and then you're creating action steps in order to meet those goals. You want to list the things that will help you be able to achieve that goal and find a way to be able to take those action steps and be able to have a sense of how you're going to do them, what it's going to mean for you to accomplish that goal, and that sort of thing. One note on all of this, maybe some of you in the past have taken various personality tests or psychological tests, and we will get into some of the ones that have been out there. But the big thing to know is that while those things may measure your temperament, they may measure how you feel about certain things, they're not really going to assess your emotional intelligence. That's a different entity from just who you are as a person overall. Remember, emotional intelligence talks about how you interact with and how you perceive and sense others. So it's not all, again, just about yourself. Your personality does play a certain role in it, but it's not the entire thing. Okay, now that we have a sense of what emotional intelligence is, how can we apply this to selling media? Well, the author suggests 3 golden rules of selling. And let's take a look at those now. Rule number 1, do unto others as they would have others do unto them. You might have heard something similar to this before, but if you are paying attention, there's a very different thing here. We're not talking about the golden rule as it's shown in the Bible. Really, what we're looking at here, we're not assuming that others like the same things that you do. Modern psychology and emotional intelligence indicates that it's better to recognize people's diversity and differences and to value their needs, their wants, their desires, and their preferences. So just because you want someone to treat you in a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that others want to be treated in that particular way. So try your best to think about how someone else wants to be treated, how someone else wants to be related with, and do those things. Watch how other people interact with that person and who they receive positively, who they don't. And try to do your best to relate with them in those ways that they see as positive. Now, rule number 2, people like and trust people exactly like themselves. We're kind of vain that way. We are very much more comfortable with what we know, what we understand, what we feel is comfortable. This rule reinforces the notion that people are most comfortable with other people who are similar, a fact we observe every day as people gather in groups and cliques. This is something that we've known ever since middle school and high school. The jocks hang out together. The geeks hang out together. Those that like various types of music hang out together. We tend to like and trust those that we have some sort of commonality with or some sort of sentimental attachment to. So that is something to keep in mind. And then thirdly, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Now, that saying has been attributed to several people throughout history, but it's something that really holds true. They really don't care how much you know, by and large. Now, I mean, there are those of us that, we will talk in some classes about what it means to be a thought leader in a particular area. But the thing of it is, when we're dealing with relationships, especially when it comes to things where we have to have a certain amount of trust, like within a business relationship, you really want to have that sort of sense that people are looking for each other's best interests, that there's a certain amount of care and compassion towards the other person that really helps to build that trust relationship. Feeling and communicating a sense of caring for another person is going to have to come first, because anything else that doesn't have that as a premise is not necessarily going to be trusted. So you have to put another's concerns before your own concerns. Now, how do we apply these 3 golden rules? First off, before a meeting, pause, exhale, and breathe. Take time to recognize your feelings, to relax, and to exhale. This will allow you to manage your emotions consciously and to control and use your emotions and your tensions to help you. So, just taking a moment, thinking about what situation you're in, thinking about how you're feeling at that moment, how that might impact how you interact with somebody, how you go about doing a certain task. Those sort of things are going to be very helpful for you. Stop, think about it, pause for just a second. Step 2, sense the mood and the emotional climate of the person or the group that you're meeting with. Effective leaders develop a knack for sensing the mood of a crowd or an audience and playing to it. Know your audience. Know their likes, know their dislikes, know their reactions. Kind of get a sense of what sort of mood they're in at that particular moment. Some people don't like to be joked around with or try to be made to laugh if they're not if they're feeling particularly sad or irritated. Some people need that to break their tension. Do your best to try to figure out where someone is, what someone needs in that particular moment. Once you do that, step 3, set the mood, the emotional tone, and the climate for the meeting that you're in. Emotion is contagious, and you want to make sure that the quote-unquote viruses that you are transmitting are positive and caring ones. If you can put out a certain amount of positivity and do it in a proper context, you very well may be able to pass that along to somebody else. Sometimes, though, the other way is true as well. This requires a certain amount of determination on your part to not let certain people and moods and emotions and things get the best of you. But, again, always look on the bright side of life. Step 4, let the person or people that you are meeting with know that you care. And some of the ways that you can do that is to be somewhat personal yourself. Talk about how you're feeling, what you're doing, things that are happening. But then don't spend a ton of time there, just a very quick thing, and then turn the conversation over to them. Ask them how they're doing, and be sincerely interested in hearing their answer. As you're dialoguing, you may want to search for common interest or other ways to connect to somebody. If there's something that the both of you like, or there's similarities within your families or your work schedules, or whatever else may be going on, find a way to have some sort of a common bond with that person. The greatest advantage you have over algorithms in our world of digital selling is going to be your ability to connect emotionally with people. While there are certain conveniences to just going onto a computer and clicking and choosing the things that you may want, there's really not a lot of personal interaction there. And sometimes that in and of itself can be a huge strength. Now, Step 5, listen with emotional synchrony. Emotional rapport can be established by the way one instantly reacts to another, especially with body language or with nonverbal cues. So do more than just having a conversation. Really pay attention to what somebody is doing, how they're acting, how they're reacting. Get to know the way that people shift when they're sitting or they're standing, maybe different facial expressions, the way that people use their hands and gesture and things like that. Try to be as sensitive as you can to those things. Pick up on those things. Depending on the situation, maybe you call it out and show a bit of empathy, or maybe you just kind of take a hint and you kind of change your approach in the way that you're having a conversation with that person. And we will talk some more about what those things mean as we go along. But for now, we're going to wrap up this chapter. So go ahead and get those notes submitted. Do your survey. Be prepared to have a discussion when we come to class. Don't forget about the study questions. Those are going to be due as well. And tell me what you think when it comes to emotional intelligence. How important is it in the world of business? Is it more important than being knowledgeable? We are talking a lot about selling as educating. How do the two best work with each other? Bring your thoughts, bring your questions. We'll talk about them when we get together in class.